Alrighty, welcome back everybody to another Mad Meta Magic, where we try to make the magic meta mad. I'm Kano, and I'm playing kind of a jank Golgari Infect list. I call it jank because I don't have Noble Hierarchs, though pretty much everything else in this deck is actually played. Except for, like, Street Wraith, of course. The only other thing I don't have that I've sort of pseudo-replaced is the Force of Vigor out of the sideboard. It's kind of a big deal, so we have a few different cards that destroy artifacts and enchantments of different mana costs, so hopefully that we don't get absolutely wrecked by Chalice of the Void. So, this is pretty simple. We play a creature with Infect. For those of you that don't know what Infect is, it deals damage as though that damage was dealt in a number of poison counters, and if a player has 10 poison counters, they lose the game. So effectively, my opponent's life total is in half, as long as I play Glistener Elves and Plague Stingers. We're a little light on Infectors in this list, but I modified this list from an actual constructed list, just using the cards that I had. So we'll see how we do here. I'm going to go ahead and take this into a Modern League, and hopefully we do well. We're probably going to have to mulligan to a creature pretty frequently, and is my guess. Should be a relatively short league. Infect usually wins fast or loses fast. So we have a Glistener Elf, we have a Might of Old Kroza, and we have an Inquisition, as well as a Street Wraith. I think this is fine. We'll keep. Since we don't have the turn 2, we might be better off Inquisitioning to start. I guess it depends on what we get off of Street Wraith. So since life total probably isn't going to matter game 1 when we're on the play, I'm going to fetch and shock, then cycle Street Wraith and see what we get. Because if I get a scale up, we will have the turn 2 kill. So, fetch Wooded Foothills, get a Overgrown Tomb, cycle Street Wraith. Okay, we get a Blossoming Defense. So I'm going to start with Inquisition. Oh, nice, lol. It's Ad Nauseam. Take Lightning Storm from them. Pass the turn. Ad Nauseam has a pretty hard time dealing with Infect. They can Angel's Grace all they want, but Phyrexian Unlife doesn't extend their life total, and what is it? Phyrexian Unlife doesn't increase their life total, and Angel's Grace makes them lose the next time state-based actions are checked after the turn its cast is over. So they could literally die on their upkeep with no ability to gain priority and cast a spell, which is kind of funny. So opponent top decked a Serum Visions. That's fair. Hopefully the sound quality is a little bit more even than it was last time. I've adjusted the mic position. Oh, this new OBS update has made the bars like way smoother. It's actually like a little hypnotic. It's kind of nice. So hopefully the quality is higher, especially than the last Tron video. Alright. Well, I was going to say, if we draw a land, I think we win. So start by Blossoming Defense. Okay. Might of Old Kroza on our main phase to give it +4/+4. Hit them for 9 Infect. I actually miscounted. I thought I had 10. I would have attacked first and then held up a Blossoming Defense. But okay, opponent plays Plains. City of Brass taps for red. They cast a Simian Spirit Guide. We untap, we draw Ink Moth. So play Ink Moth. Play Plague Stinger. Pass the turn, leave up Blossoming Defense, and now we have 3 lethal creatures next turn. And our opponent almost certainly cannot combo off, especially not after casting a Simian Spirit Guide. Yep, we got there. Alright. So versus Ad Nauseam, I actually think I want Natural State, Viridian Corruptor, and I'm kind of interested in Collective Brutalities. So I'm going to bring in 2 of those, a Natural State, Viridian Corruptor, a Wilt, and I'm going to go down a Spellskite and 4 Street Wraiths. We're going to try it like this. So Collective Brutality Duress mode kind of matters. The kill mode can kill every creature in their deck except the Thassa's Oracle. But its main mode is going to be Hand Hate here. Alright, well there's a lot of things that turn this into the turn 2 kill, so I'm going to keep. Opponent starts a Leyline of Sanctity to turn off our Hand Hate, that's fine. They start Seachrome Coast. We draw Rancor. So play Wooded Foothills, crack Wooded Foothills, get an Overgrown Tomb, untapped, and play Glistener Elf. So if we draw Might of Old Kroza, we have the turn 2. If we draw... I don't know if this list is actually running Groundswell. Hang on a sec. This list is not running Groundswell. That's actually really interesting. So our opponent played a City of Brass and passes. We draw a Plague Stinger. So play an Ink Moth, go to combat, attack for 1. Okay, opponent takes 1 Infect, and we'll play a Plague Stinger. Pass the turn. Next turn we can just scale up 2 different creatures if they tap out for like Penthead Prism or something like that. Okay, so we untap. We draw a Natural State. Play a Forest. Scale up. Scale up. Go to combat. Attack for 12 Infect. If my opponent has a Holy Day, I'm going to be really upset. I just remembered that they run fogs out of the side, like actual fog. Okay, well they path a creature, we get a Forest. They have another path? Opponent takes 6 Infect, okay? If we draw any other pump spell, we have also 2 lethal creatures again. As well as a Natural State if my opponent had something like Ensnaring Bridge or Ghostly Prison, which I don't think they ever run. I guess they technically do, but like... Draw a Spellskite. Play a Swamp. Play a Rancor. I guess I technically could have played Spellskite first, and that also would have drawn the removal spell if they've got it. I guess that was a mistake, because then we could have Rancored the Inkmoth Nexus, but I don't think my opponent has another kill spell. I think we got him here, just judging by the way they played. Opponent is going to Spoils of the Vault, so we're going to Natural State Penthead Prism in response. Opponent floats white mana, lets it get destroyed. Opponent aims Path to Exile. So we will get Rancor back, and we'll be able to land a Spellskite. Okay, no basic lands left. Rancor gets put into our hand. Play Spellskite, pass the turn. Fun magic fact. Rancor was actually supposed to cost 1 green, 1 colorless, but I believe it was due to a printing error or an image editing error when the card was originally printed in one of the Urza sets, that they printed it as costing only 1 green. And by the time they noticed, people were already playing with it, and they were like, well, I guess it costs 1 green. So that's why when it got reprinted in the modern sets, it's like actually really good. This opponent starts off with a cantrip, putting 1 card on top and 1 card on the bottom. Okay, we untap. Draw an Inquisition, so start... Oh, we can't Inquisition them. They have a Leyline. Herp derp. Activate Inkmoth. Rancor Inkmoth. Go to combat. Redirect to Spellskite. And game over. We win. Nice. So it's a very similar yet different feeling to playing something like Hammer Time. The idea is you play like a threat, you play as many ways as you can to protect that threat along the way, so something like Spellskite as an example, or you have Blossoming Defense and Vines of Vastwood, and then you follow up with making it big enough to kill your opponent in 1 attack. So instead of Colossus Hammer, we have a whole bunch of pump spells. I think in the average case, Hammer Time is more consistent and better. I think in edge cases, Infect gets better because you are in the colors to be running Hand Hate and like Force of Vigor and things like that. So they are approximately equivalent in my mind, but they're not the same, if that makes sense. Alright, well I think I have to keep this despite the fact that it's slow, by virtue of the fact that we have 3 different threats we can play. Blossoming Defense is a very nice thing to follow this up with, so we'll start Glistener Elf past the turn. Opponent plays an Urza's Mine into a Chalice of the Void on 1. Well, that sucks a lot. So this is probably Eldrazi-tron. Get in for 1. Opponent takes 1 Infect. They play an Eldrazi Temple. I guess this is a reason we should probably be playing Become Immense, because I don't think we can actually resolve like any of our spells. They can take anything they want here. It doesn't actually matter because we can't actually cast it. This works off of converted mana cost, and we don't have anything with an X that we can like manipulate around that cost. So play Wooded Foothills, crack Wooded Foothills. We will get an Overgrown Tomb tapped. Go to combat. Attack for 1 Infect in the air. Hit our opponent to 2 poison. Play another Plague Stinger. We want to get that out of our hand as quickly as possible, in case our opponent has another Thought-Knot Seer. That's why we did that instead of attack with the Inkmoth Nexus. It's more damage over time, effectively. Opponent does not attack. We untap. We draw Street Wraith, which technically we could play as a blocker. Jank for the win, I guess. So, animate Inkmoth. Go to combat. Attack, attack, attack. Hit them for 3 Infect in the air. I think I am going to cycle Street Wraith. Scale up, I don't think we can resolve the overload cost. Because, yeah, once again, it's still CMC that gets countered by Chalice, not what cost you paid. Which is important for considering things like Chalice of the Void plus Thalia, or Chalice of the Void plus Trinisphere. Like, those sorts of interactions do matter. Okay, opponent attacks us for 9. We have 4 Infect. I think we just take the 9. If we, there might be something in our deck we can use to get 1 more pump. I guess not. So play the Forest. Animate Inkmoth. Go to combat. Attack here, here, and here. I guess I actually should have blocked with Glistener Elf, because now if they draw removal, we die. Whereas if we had blocked last turn, I guess they could still stop us from another 5 mana. Is this just another Reality Smasher? So even had we blocked, we would be dead. Well, that's kind of unfortunate, but once again, our opponent is playing a deck in the main deck that shuts, or a card in the main deck that shuts off our entire deck. So in comes Wilt and Viridian Corruptor, plus a Dismember, and probably Fatal Pushes as well. We're taking out... We need to go down some number of 1-mana spells. Actually don't think Fatal Push is correct here, now that I think about it. I think I'm just going to cut the Street Wraiths. We'll run it like this. Alright, we'll play first. We do have an Inkmoth Nexus. We have some decent pump spells to go with it. I think we have to keep... I'm not super thrilled about it because of how slow Inkmoth Nexus is as compared to all of our other threats. But start Inkmoth, pass the turn. Opponent starts Power Plant. Map. We untap. We draw Scale Up. So... Shock Overgrown Tomb. Animate Inkmoth. Go to combat. Attack for 1, and we're going to make this 3 here. So basically, if my opponent spends their turn cracking map, or not playing Chalice, or not holding up Dismember, we can just scale up and beat them. So I have a sneaking suspicion that my opponent has... has removal. So we're going to crack this for green. Animate Inkmoth. Go to combat. Get in for 1. Okay, no blocks. So we're going to leave up Blossoming Defense until the end of turn. If we draw 1 more mana, we'll have Blossoming Defense, Vines of Vastwood, and Scale Up to kill our opponent with. Scale Up is now a lethal pump spell. Unfortunately, if my opponent just like plays a Karn or something here and exiles Inkmoth, there's nothing we can do about that. Matter Reshaper is not that threatening. Okay, let's hope to draw mana. That is technically mana. So play Inkmoth. Animate Inkmoth. We have to hope they don't have double removal spell. So cast Scale Up. They have a Spatial Contortion. Blossoming Defense. They have a Spatial Contortion. Alright. So if our opponent doesn't play a Chalice and can't answer our other Ink Moth, we do have Scale Up for victory here. I suspect they're going to have to take their turn to actually play a threat, though. Opponent plays Blast Zone, which thankfully does not interact with Ink Moth Nexus in any meaningful way. Mana would make me feel the best, but we just have to go for the Scale Up. We're dead every other way. So Animate Ink Moth. They can't have the third removal spell. Scale Up. Nice! Whew! Alright. Do we want to make any more adjustments before playing last game? I don't think so. I don't think we play Natural State. Like, we probably should bring in the other Spell Skites. But, like, in the average case, they're going to be really bad, because, like, I think my opponent only plays, like, 2 Spatial Contortions, or Spatial Contortions, or however you want to pronounce that. This is a Plague Stinger with Vines of Vastwood backup. I have a feeling if I mulligan, I'm going to get an even worse hand. I mean, like, if we get to 3 mana, we're going to win. That'd be a turn 3 victory. Yeah, I don't know what the odds of us drawing another good Infect creature is. I think I have to keep this. Odds are my opponent's going to have, like, Chalice or something that's going to completely obliterate this deck at the moment, but, like... Okay, second Plague Stinger is a little better. Makes me feel a little better. Not a lot, just a little. We at least have a backup plan if my opponent plays a second Spatial Contortion, but Chalice on 1 means this is probably game over unless we top deck a Wilt and in a hurry. So we'll get an Overgrown Tomb tapped. Opponent plays Chalice on 1. We untap. We draw a Spellskite. Because we have 2 Plague Stingers, I'm going to start with a Plague Stinger. Pass the turn. Opponent has a Blast Zone, which it looks like they're going to take up on 2. Draw another Wooded Foothills. So go to combat, we'll get in for 1. Okay. Second main phase, we'll crack Wooded Foothills, we'll get an Overgrown Tomb tapped, and play Spellskite. So this is to try and encourage my opponent to sacrifice a land and crack Blast Zone. If they don't have the last Tron land, this should set them back a ways, and hopefully our other Plague Stinger we can protect. Oh, we can't actually protect it with Vines of Vastwood. So, untap. We draw a Blooming Marsh, which we will play tapped, because we don't have the landfall pump spell Groundswell. Attack for 1 in the air. Opponent takes 1. Now I'm going to play the other Plague Stinger. They sack Blast Zone. Okay, we lose our guys. So it's not impossible for us to win, it's just unlikely. Opponent plays another Tron land. If they play a Thought-Knot Seer here, they're gonna take Plague Stinger, because that's how we actually stay in this game. Karn Great Creator does make it a heck of a lot harder to win. We basically have to top deck... Walking Ballista I think we can't win through, though. Yeah. Okay. Alright, I'm going to concede and go to the next round. We can't beat a Walking Ballista, and our opponent knows that. We were close, but we did keep a slow hand. I probably should have mulliganed, but, like, I'm not sure that passing up that hand was worth it. If my opponent didn't have a Chalice, that hand would have actually been excellent, especially because we did end up drawing mana, which means on turn 3 or 4 we would have killed our opponent for sure with protection. So... Alright, round 3. Here we go. I would love to play first. We don't have a lot of pump spells, but we do have creatures, so I'm okay with this. So I'll start Blooming Marsh, play Glistener Elf. Pass the turn. When it starts Primal Beyond, meaning they're almost certainly that rare elemental deck. Yup, it's a rainbow land for elementals only, so cycle Street Wraith, we get a Blossoming Defense, which is nice. We draw Might of Old Corrosa. Do we go for the 5 damage now? I think so. So Might of Old Corrosa will get in for 5. We do have to use our only green for this. You know, I wonder if those Street Wraiths should be Manamorphose. Because turning Inkmoth Nexus mana into Green mana might actually be great. Okay, opponent plays a Voice of Resurgence, but I think they're dead. So play Inkmoth Nexus, use Inkmoth to animate Inkmoth, then we can Blossoming Defense, Mutagenic Growth, and attack them for 5. Cool. So versus the Elemental deck, I have no idea what they run. Probably want Collective Brutalities, but I don't know what else, so I'm just going to run it back like this. It's possible that they're running Chalice too, or some crazy tech, because they wouldn't have a lot of 1-drops. I think just Flamekin Harbinger, or Harbinger? I don't know how to English. So, I mean, this hand is fast. If we draw a Scale Up, we win. Probably. Opponent starts Stomping Ground tapped. Okay. We draw Wooded Foothills, so play Wooded Foothills, thin our deck, get an Overgrown Tomb, untapped, and play Glistener Elf. Pass the turn. So creature-based decks, we're a little bit softer too, because we are not playing blue and we don't have Distortion Strike, which can let us attack uninhibited for 2 turns, as well as we're playing Plague Stinger instead of Blighted Agent, which is a 2-mana 1/1 that is just straight up unblockable, as opposed to having flying. We draw a 3rd Inkmoth Nexus. We'll play Inkmoth Nexus, pass the turn, no attacks. I am just going to F6 here because I don't think I would use Might to save Glistener Elf, even in some crazy circumstances here. Vesperlark, okay. That is a little more annoying. We get another Glistener Elf, so play 2nd Inkmoth, play Glistener Elf, pass the turn. Yeah, probably should have mulliganed to try and get a faster hand. I think I need to mulligan a little more aggressively than I have been. Okay, opponent plays a Voice of Resurgence and a Phantasmal Image copying Vesperlark. Okay. I don't actually think we can beat this. This is just so awkward, but like, play Wooded Foothills, crack, we'll get a Forest, animate Inkmoth, go to combat, attack for 2 in the air. Opponent should trade with both of these. This might be okay because we do have another Inkmoth. Oh, never mind. Never mind, I'm just dumb. Okay, let's go for a fast hand game 3. Didn't realize how those things interacted. I'm gonna bring in Dismember over the last Street Wraith, and we'll try like that. Alright, this time we're on the play, which is a huge advantage, especially for this deck. This hand is almost fantastic. Mulligan. Still no land. Okay, mulligan again. Alright, I have to make this work, so we'll keep. I'm going to put back Mutagenic Growth, and I have to put back Vines of Vastwood, I think. Our opponent also mulliganed to 5, which is good news. And we're starting with an Inquisition, so we'll have a good idea of what's actually going on in our opponent's hand. They have a Tangled Hedron, a Shriekmaw, which is annoying, but Shriekmaw does not hit black creatures. I think I take Tangled Floral Hedron. I think that's like their only actual early play. The rest of my opponent's hand does not seem very good. They could technically Phantasmal Image our Plague Stinger. So we draw Wooded Foothills, play Wooded Foothills, fetch with Wooded Foothills. Let's get an Overgrown Tomb untapped. Hopefully we start drawing some non-land cards. Play Plague Stinger and pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays a Cavern, naming Elemental. They might just have to... Oh, they can't Phantasmal Image this turn. Shriekmaw has no legal targets. Nice try, though. We draw Blossoming Defense. So let's go ahead and Rancor. Play Wooded Foothills. Go to combat and attack for 3. So my opponent's best play might be to somehow get blue mana and then play Phantasmal Image, cloning our guy. But we can kill the clone with a Blossoming Defense, which is a little awkward, but doable. I don't want to do that if I don't have to. If I draw like any other pump spell, I'll probably do that. So Desperation Phantasmal Image. Okay, so there's no sense in giving it hexproof in response. That doesn't prevent Phantasmal Image from copying it. Alright, Crackwooded Foothills. Get our last Overgrown Tomb tapped. Untap. We draw an Ink Moth Nexus, so... Oh, it's target creature you control! That is significantly worse. I think we still attack and try and trample in. Because they'll take 4 Infect from that and be at 7, then we can animate Ink Moth and put Rancor on it next turn. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Attack for 3. Opponent blocks. Give the old Blossoming Defense, but because of Infect, it will actually die even after the... Or it will die when the Power and Toughness pump wears off, which is at the end step. Or the cleanup step, technically, but... Put Rancor back in our hand. Pass the turn. And we do have a lethal attack next turn, and my opponent only has 3 cards in hand. I mean, if they have Fulminator Mage, that can kill Ink Moth. Skelemental makes us discard Rancor, which means we have to draw a new pump spell, but that's literally 90% of our deck. Pump spell, please. That is not a pump spell. So play Wooded Foothills, animate Ink Moth, go to combat and get in for 1. Okay, opponent's down to 8. They play a Thunderkin Awakener. They go to combat, they reanimate Skelemental, I think, just to get the most damage in. So we take 7 here. We go to 3. Any pump spell wins us the game. They play a Flamekin Harbinger. Yeah, this comes down to whether or not we draw a pump spell. They reveal another Thunderkin Awakener. Okay, we're going to fetch and get a forest. Just to give ourselves the best chance of drawing what we need. And that'll do it. Unless my opponent's last card in hand is a gut shot. Rancor on Ink Moth. Go to combat. Awesome. Cool, so that puts us at 2-1. I'll see you guys in round 4. Yeah, if we draw a single other mana, this is going to be great. Unfortunately, we have our 1 basic only fetch land in hand. There's a possibility that that should be a Verdant Catacombs. I just don't have one. Okay, opponent is playing Tron. As long as they're Tron and not Eldrazi Tron, we might actually stand a chance of doing the whole turn 2 kill to them. Draw a land, please. Scale up's nice, it's not a land. So crack Prismatic Vista, get a forest, play Glistener Elf, pass the turn. I don't think my opponent has anything that... Oh, I guess they could have Warping Whale. Opponent is tapping out for Expedition Map, it looks like. Maybe not. Okay, come on, land. Any land will do. That counts. Play Waterlogged Grove. Go ahead and scale up. Rancor. Go to combat. Attack them for 8. And we'll go for the kill. If they have to have Dismember, which several Tron lists are not running in the main deck right now. We get you? Turn 2? Nice. So Tron is a deck that does not line up well with Infect. Infect usually stomps Tron pretty hard. I want to drop Street Wraiths and bring in 4 different artifact removal spells in the form of Natural State, Wilts, and Verdian Corruptor. It's possible they're running Chalice out of the side. It's not necessarily likely, but it's close enough that it makes me worry, so I'm going to do that. This does make our average hand a bit worse, but gives us a game against hands that would otherwise beat us outright. That's the strategy here. I think we started on the draw, too, so my opponent... Yeah, my opponent got to go first. Yeah, this will work. We have Protection, we have Infectors, we have Scale-Ups, and other pump spells. This is a good hand. Question is, will it be fast enough against Tron on the play? Okay, second Blooming Marsh is alright. I technically should have started Inkmoth Nexus, but don't think it matters too much. I do have to play it next turn. Okay, opponent plays an Urza's Mine. Cracks it for a Sylvan Scrying. Okay, so opponent will have Tron. I wish I had one more mana, like if I was playing, I don't know, Noble Hierarchs in this deck. Play Inkmoth, play Plague Stinger. We kind of have to go shields down here. Any of the big threats that my opponent could have on 7 mana, like Karn or Ugin the Ineffable, can only take out Plague Stinger or Inkmoth Nexus, but not both. If they don't kill Plague Stinger, and they like hit Inkmoth Nexus, they lose on the spot. If they hit Plague Stinger, they can stay alive for a turn, but will still have enough power to kill a Karn, I think. Walking Ballista X3. That does make life rough. There's no reason they shouldn't ping there, yeah. Okay, untap. Play Blooming Marsh. So we animate Inkmoth Nexus. They ping in response. We can Blossoming Defense and Mutagenic Growth. Okay, yeah, we can animate an attack, but we have to let our opponent ping before we cast a pump spell. Go to combat. Okay, so we'll give him the old Mutagenic Growth. Now we Blossoming Defense. Okay. So we hit our opponent for 5, and as long as they don't have a way to interact with the land, they die next turn to Scale Up or Might of Old Kroza. So beginning of combat, move to attacks, hit our opponent for 5. They are now at 5 poison counters. They do have active Tron with at least 1 redraw, so my chances of winning here are not actually that high. Opponent plays a Sanctum of Ugin. If this is another Walking Ballista, I think we're just toast. Alright, Karn also sucks a lot, because now we don't have an active creature without Summoning Sickness. Okay, they tank Inkmoth. Our best bet would be to draw a Glistener Elf, I think. Actually, any Infector other than Plague Stinger, so Glistener Elf or Inkmoth Nexus would work fine here. Okay, play Inkmoth Nexus, and we'll pass the turn. So if my opponent casts or if my opponent just activates Karn, we have to animate Inkmoth and then Vines of Vastwood it. And we're going to do so in such a way that we would bluff another protection spell. But if my opponent has another Walking Ballista or a Dismember or a Spatial Contortion, we're dead. Okay. Opponent activates Karn, so we animate Inkmoth Nexus using its own mana. And then Vines of Vastwood. Single green only. We can bluff that we have more action. We could technically Might of Old Kroza if they had Warping Whale. Okay. So it can't be the target of abilities or spells my opponents control. It's effectively hexproof, but not quite. Okay, opponent plays an Urza's Mine. So the only thing that would really get us here would be if they are holding a removal spell they didn't use that they want to use on our turn, or if they play a big Walking Ballista. Okay, opponent plays Karn Great Creator. They wish for Liquid Metal Coating. I think they lose. They need Trinisphere here. Okay, they got Trinisphere. So that hurts quite a bit. So we need to top deck like 2 lands in a row. Trinisphere affects you too, dude. Trinisphere affects you, dude. So this is something that, because I do a lot of Tron content, this is like, I'm going to criticize this, but I would criticize any deck, and I am equally as guilty, probably more so than anyone watching this video. But one of the big problems is you need to know what your own cards do. You need to be intimately aware of, if you're going to wish for something, how that card works. Kind of like play around, counterplay. If it affects you, how. You need to know those things. So what I can do here, I'm actually going to attack Karn rather than my opponent. We have we have pump spells that will kill our opponent instantaneously if we ever connect with them. We just need to draw a lot more mana before we can. This takes my opponent off of Wishing with Karn for a turn, and their targets to animate are not great. If this is something huge, we just concede, basically. Yeah, we cannot beat a Walking Ballista with a Trinisphere on board. So we concede and go to game 3. We got close, but weren't quite there. Do we make any adjustments? I don't think so. I think we just run it back. Now that we're on the play, we just have to have a fast hand and we'll be fine. Alright, we'll play first. I am gonna keep this. We are basically a pump spell away from killing our opponent. We also have some interaction, so if my opponent kept a hand that requires map to get to Tron, or they're holding removal, we can at least interact with them that way. I'm going to play Spellskite, I think, before we start animating Inkmoth as well, which is why I'm starting Inquisition. They have Tower, Power Plant, Map. Okay, let's test our opponent's Tron luck. There is a million things they can top deck to still assemble Tron, but we did make it a lot harder for them. Okay, opponent starts Tower. We did not suffer the Thoughtseize curse of our opponent drawing exactly what we take every time. We're going to play an Inkmoth. Question of whether we play Spellskite or play Glistener. I actually think we play Glistener here. Simply because if my opponent did draw removal, this gives our opponent less opportunities to draw removal, because Glistener Elf is a lot faster. Okay, opponent plays Power Plant and passes. Draw Blossoming Defense. So I think we attack double Mutagenic and then play Spellskite second main. Well, I guess there's no real difference to playing it second main or first main. If my opponent had Dismember, they could beat double Mutagenic anyway. It just, like, we could have potentially gotten a Blossoming Defense in edgeways or something, but we do need to draw another green mana to win, I think. Okay. Fire off Mutagenic. Fire off second Mutagenic. Hit our opponent for 5. Okay. We have protection against at least one removal spell. If we draw green, we win the game, I think, on the spot. Alright. What'd you draw, opponent? Chromatic Star, I don't think is good enough. Crack Star for green. Get one redraw. May play Chromatic Sphere, which does not inspire confidence. And they play a Blast Zone on 1. Okay. We draw Inkmoth. We're still 1 damage away from lethal here. So play Inkmoth. Animate Inkmoth. Go to combat. Attack for 2. I am going to save Blossoming Defense. It's also lethal next turn, and plays around a removal spell slightly better. We could actually use it to save Spellskite if we wanted to. Like, redirect something onto Spellskite and then give Spellskite hexproof, which would be a way to survive a Karn activation. Okay, opponent cracks Chromatic Sphere and uses Blast Zone to get green. They play a Walking Ballista X1. Alright, I think we got him. Draw Plague Stinger, which isn't relevant. So use Inkmoth Nexus to animate Inkmoth Nexus. Go to combat. Yeah, opponent has to have Dismember to beat us, and they haven't had it for several turns, so I really doubt they have it here. Attack for 1 in the air. Okay. Blossoming Defense for lethal. The only way our opponent could beat us is if they Dismember Spellskite now and then ping, all in response to Blossoming Defense. Okay. Activate Spellskite, redirect Walking Ballista by paying 2 life. Spellskite takes 1 damage. Blossoming Defense pumps Inkmoth to a 3/3, and we kill our opponent. So, if you're playing against a black deck, and you're playing Tron, for my Tron players that happen to be watching the Infect video, I know that's not many of you, but it might be some. If you're playing Tron, and you're on the draw against a deck that's playing black, be cautious about keeping Tronland map. Because if they open Thoughtseize and you have no backup plans, like you have no spheres, no stars, you might be screwed by just turn 1 hand hate. You can, like, I've had that happen to me. I think that happened to me in the last league I played on camera, the video that came out yesterday. So just stay aware of that. And I'll see you guys in round 5. Alrighty, round 5, here we go. I'd love to play first. Our deck is best when it plays first. Glistener Elf, Pump Spell, Inquisition, Street Wraith, sure. Opponent reveals Luris. That's a little scary because it could mean my opponent is like a burn deck, which we would have a really tough time beating, especially with this hand. The opponent does mulligan to 6. If they go to 5 or less, I'm going to start Inquisition rather than Glistener Elf. Well, I'll cycle Street Wraith first, but okay. And they stayed at 6. So start cycle Street Wraith, second Might. Okay, at this point I'm just going to Glistener Elf. Because we just have to top deck a Mutagenic Growth and we have the turn 2. Opponent starts Bloodstained Mire. They fetch, shock, and Fatal Push Glistener Elf. Okay. We untap, draw Plague Stinger. Opponent probably has more removal, so we're going to go ahead and Inquisition now. Pretty lucky draw there. Opponent has Dismember and 2 Scourge of the Skyclave, so we take Dismember, pass the turn. This is a scenario where I'm very happy that Scourge of the Skyclaves does not fly, as its name would imply. Opponent starts Bloodstained Mire, fetches, shocks a Blood Crypt, and plays a Scourge of the Skyclaves. We draw Mutagenic Growth, alright. Well, as long as Plague Stinger does not get removed, and we know our opponent is holding an island and a Scourge, 1 unknown. We could save our guy from a Bolt if we had to, though that would be very disheartening. Okay, opponent Thoughtseizes us. Has to take a Might of Old Karoza. So it's 1 of 2 unknown cards in their hand. If I was my opponent and I had removal, I would cast it right now. Letting us draw gives us the opportunity to draw Blossoming Defense, or one of our million other protection spells. My opponent attacks, and I am not going to block. I'll take 2, and Scourge of the Skyclaves will go up to being a 4/4. My opponent could play an island and a second Scourge, which would be a pretty ballsy move because we have a lot of pump spells that could just kill our opponent. But if they have nothing else to do, that's better than doing nothing. Okay. Play Scourge of the Skyclaves, they only have 1 card left. So if we draw Might of Old Karoza, if we draw Scale Up, if we draw Vines of Vastwood, any of those kill our opponent. Wooded Foothills, however, does not. So we're going to go ahead and Might of Old Karoza. Play Wooded Foothills. Go to combat. Attack for 5. And we'll go ahead and cast Mutagenic Growth as well. No reason not to at this point, because Mutagenic Growth by itself cannot save our creature from Bolt. I guess it could save it from a Tarfire, which maybe they run in the edge case, but that would be more for like, oh, they're playing Traverse the Elvenwald, and they're playing green, which our opponent almost certainly is not. So I think this is fair. Any pump spell should kill our opponent here. We're not going to fetch until after they attack, of course. If they drew removal, we lose. And I think that's about all of the strategy I have right now for this game. Okay. So we die to removal, or we die to not drawing a pump spell. Does that kill us? Hang on. So we get hit for 4, we go to 12, then these both become 8, and we die. Yep. We die to Temur Battle Rage as well. That's pretty lame. So maybe it was correct to actually chump and use that Mutagenic Growth, because that would have stopped our opponent's creatures from being 4/4s, and we would have had 1 less. And alright, well, whatever. Fatal pushes in. I think I want Collective Brutalities as well. Street Wraith's definitely out. I don't want to be losing any extra life if I don't have to. And drop 1 Rancor. And I think I probably want Spell Skites. Pulse of Murasa. I definitely want a Pulse of Murasa. I'm going to drop another Rancor for that. And we're going to try like this. Alright, we'll play first. No Infector. I'm going to mulligan. Kind of a weird hand, but I think this is actually worth keeping. We might have to fetch a swamp. But it also mulligans to 6. I'm going to put back... I don't want to put back Scale Up, because that gives us our shortest clock. But I also don't want to put back our creatures. I think those are actually more important. It's possible I should have put back a Plague Slinger, but we'll see. Put a mulligans to 5. Okay. So we'll start Ink Moth. Pass the turn. Opponent starts Fetch Shock Thoughtseize. They probably take Collective Brutality, if I had to guess. I think Prismatic Vista should probably be any other green fetch, literally. Like Windswept Teeth would be better. Yep, we discard Collective Brutality. Opponent plays a Mishra's Bauble and cracks it. No, they don't crack it. They want to see what we draw. They want to see what's on top of our deck after we draw, maybe? Okay, they want to see what we draw. We draw a second Inkmoth Nexus, so play Prismatic Vista. Fetch up our basic Swamp. Play Plague Stinger. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent draws. They play a Bloodstained Mire. They fetch and shock. Oh, they don't. Okay, they just play Bloodstained Mire and pass. I misunderstood the audio cues, and Moto is lagging too hard for me to actually know what's going on. Play a Wooded Foothills. Go to combat. Attack for 1. I probably should have played the other Inkmoth this turn. Okay. But it cracks Bloodstained Mire for a Blood Crypt untapped. And dismembers. Okay. So second main phase, play Plague Stinger. Pass the turn. One plays a Watery Grave untapped, down to 8. Crack Wooded Foothills, and we'll go ahead and get a Overgrown Tomb tapped. Untap. Draw Blooming Marsh. Play Inkmoth Nexus. Animate Inkmoth. Go to combat. Attack for 2 Infect. Okay, opponent takes 2. So we pass. Opponent plays a Blood Crypt untapped and casts Death Shadow. A great big Death Shadow. Okay. We untap. Draw Scale Up. So animate Inkmoth. Cast Scale Up. Opponent has an Aether Gust, so probably put that on top. Go to combat. So we could leave an Inkmoth Nexus actually back to block. The problem is the only way we're going to die is if my opponent has Temur Battle Rage, and if they have Temur Battle Rage, we're going to die regardless. Should have played that Blooming Marsh tapped, but I already F6'd and Moto lagged way too hard for me to click Turn Off Auto Yields, which I hate. They really need to fix this memory leak bug that's affecting Moto. Okay. Draw Scale Up. So cast Scale Up. This is lethal by itself. Go to combat. Attack for 6. Opponent has a Fatal Push. Okay. Yeah, we do not have a great matchup with Death Shadow. Especially because I'm not playing Noble Hierarch. The fun thing about Death Shadow is you can actually sneak in and kill them with damage off of Hierarch because they lose so much life. And Hierarch is normally one of your only creatures that like actually does regular damage instead of infect damage. The exalted buffs also add up a lot, so... Okay, opponent goes to combat and attacks with Death Shadow. We're going to animate an Inkmoth Nexus to block. Okay. So my opponent has played a Scalding Tarn, they put Lurrus in their hand, and they have one unknown. We basically have to draw a Scale Up, or Might of Old Kroza. Rancor gets us to be a 3-1. Rancor is 1 off. I mean, I guess we could technically try that, but... Go ahead and Rancor the Inkmoth Nexus. Go to combat. Attack for 3. Mutagenic growth. Paying actual mana for that. Opponent goes to 9 poison counters. They get Rancor back to our hand. Opponent has to either kill us or have a removal spell. Both of which they are very capable of doing. They can even Mishra's Bauble off of Lurrus to get a redraw, but we die to a single Lightning Bolt. Or, heck, we die to Tarfire. We also die to, like, Shockland. Alright, not a Shockland. Oh, man. I, like, got really tired all of a sudden. Okay, opponent plays Lurrus. They'll get back Mishra's Bauble, just get an extra draw. Being attacked by Death Shadow down 2. And we die to Cycle Street Wraith. Sounds like we take 9 and go to 2. Okay, it's going to rely on what our opponent drew here. Animate Inkmoth. Go to combat. Attack for 1. Did they draw it? Yep, they did. Drown in the lock. I really despise the Death Shadow deck. I think Death Shadow and Scourge are stupid cards. I don't think you should be able to win the game by losing it. So. Alright, well we went 3 and 2. We get a treasure chest, let's see what we get. Come on, full set. That'd be sweet. We get 15 play points and a Scute Mob. Aw, isn't it cute? Alright, well, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed Infect. A couple of notes on the deck. If you were wanting to play a list like this one, you should definitely be running at least 1 Become Immense. You should definitely not be running Prismatic Vista. It should be Verdant Catacombs. Your Waterlogged Grove in this case would also be Nurturing Peatland. We should definitely be running more Nurturing Peatlands. You should definitely be running Noble Hierarch if you have access to them. I would cut like a Rancor and a Blossoming Defense and a Vines, and make room for at least, and a Spellskite, and I would play 4 Noble Hierarch. Out of the sideboard, you definitely want the 4 mana Force of Vigor, dropping like Verdian Corruptor and Pulse of, well, not Verdian Corruptor, but Verdian Corruptor and Wilts and Natural State. You might want another Dismember. You could play Lurrus in this deck if you got rid of the Street Wraiths. I didn't because I don't have Baubles, but that's like a kind of a fair swap. Playing like 3 to 4 Mishra's Baubles and a Lurrus would be a totally fine backup plan if you're playing a longer, grindier game. But other than that, I think this deck's fine. Even this is like pseudo-budget. I say pseudo-budget because we don't have the right cards, but we have cards that do work, sort of. So, anyway, I've rambled enough. If you like this content, you want to see more like it, please leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined. We are very close to 400 subscribers. I have 393 at last count. I'm super, super stoked about that. So if you'd like, please subscribe. You can always change your mind later. It doesn't cost you anything. And you can follow me on Twitch. Same username on Twitch as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Which I think this video goes up Wednesday, because today is Tuesday, yep. So, immediately after this video goes up, not immediately after, this video is going to go up at noon, Mountain Time. 4 hours from the start of this 4 hours from the release of this video, I will be streaming for at least a couple of hours. It's going to be kind of a shorter stream because I have a medical appointment later in the day that I have to meet during my regular streaming hours. So I'll be streaming at 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. I think is how that works out. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. You're all wonderful human beings. Bye!